to us about now about what you do for work.
So what I do for work is I coach people who have spent a certain amount of time in a field. So it could be a doctor who spent 15 years in that field, or a lawyer or a teacher. It doesn't matter where they are and where they want to go. The key is they want to reinvent. So you could be working in the private sector, going to nonprofit, private sector, self-employment. And I'm trying to help people figure out what is it they want to do, because a lot of people don't know. They have no idea.
Right.
They know they're miserable. They know they hate their career. They're using burnout skills. They're having health problems. When I ask them, what do you want to do? I don't know.
Right.
And so the big part of my work, and the early part of my work, is using a variety of assessment tools. And an assessment tool could be an online test, could be a homework assignment, could be a journaling exercise, could be a card game. Using a variety of tools to help them figure out, well, what are my motivated skills? What am I good at? And what do I enjoy? What are my interests? What's my personality or behavioral style? What's a good career that would fit for that?
So many people wish they knew that.
Right.
So you have tests, inventories, you call them, and assessments that help people get the answer to that?
Yes, and usually they're homework assignments. A lot of them are tools that I've developed over time, or I take a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and I create my own. I have an exercise called Peak Experiences.
I heard you say that the other day.
Which is just really fun. And people have to write about their peak experiences.
At work?
I don't say anything, and I see what comes up. Are they all work, or are they all
interesting
hobbies, or just personal things? And it helps me see, well, what are the skills that they're using? What are the things that they're valuing in terms of what are the rewards that they want to get out of their work? And I can pull lots of things from that. And then, I might have them do 2 or 3 interesting exercises like that. And then from those, I can see where maybe there's some holes and we're missing more information. I might give them an online assessment. Some people prefer to take assessments online.
Yes.
Some people prefer to journal. And I can tell that because I use a tool with people right up front called DISC, which we had talked about, which is a behavioral and communication assessment. And based on their style, I can judge what kind of tools would work better.
Great.
Some people like to talk.
Right.
Some people like to write.
Right.
So I have a lot of people who just journal for pages and pages and pages and send it to me.
Now, what if somebody doesn't? Do people have to come to your office? Like, people who are watching the show, many people are not in the Boston area. Mm-hmm. Some are, and some aren't. So can people work with you over the phone?
Yeah, it's a good question, actually. And, ideally, if I could meet them face-to-face, it would be great. But interestingly enough, I have clients all over the world. I mentioned to you the other day I have 2 clients in Hong Kong.
Right.
I have a client who I worked with last year in South Carolina who found my YouTube channel and Career Reinvention and contacted me. So it doesn't really matter where they are.
Great.
If there's a card sort or a card game I want to use, sometimes I'll actually snail mail it to them.
Yes.
But there's always usually a web-based version of an assessment tool that I can use. But I just talk to them.
Right. Okay, good. So how did you get into this line of work to begin with?
Interesting question. So when I was running this consulting company, Trilogy Consultants, I was consulting high-tech companies on how to launch internationally. But what was I doing really is I was sitting and talking to the people I was working with in the company, and they were telling me about their careers and how much they hated this or hated that, and they wished they could do this and I would just listen, and I would just say, well, would it be okay if I gave you some advice? And the next thing you know, I've got a full-time job. So how I started actually was I went to work in higher education when I was ready to retool. My daughter was very young, so I was looking for a little bit more stability. I went to work in MBA schools as a career counselor. And in the career counseling field, when you're working in an MBA school, they want you to have an MBA, and they don't really particularly care if you have career counseling training, because they figure if you can get an MBA, you can learn the career counseling. So I got trained on the job for the career counseling piece, and I worked at Babson Bentley and Boston University for 4 or 5 years as a career counselor. That's how I got started.
That's great. It's funny how your passion, here's another example of something that you fell into because you were passionate about it, or it was one of your interests, I think is another way of saying it, that now has turned into a career. So what are some tips that you would like to give people who are thinking about reinventing themselves, you probably have so many stories of different kinds of people that you've worked with.
Yeah, I do. And I think there is a process, and that's what I tell people. You just can't read a book and jump in. You know, there are some things that I think people should do.
So are these the tips we're going to talk about?
Sure. Would that be okay?
It would be great. Matt, so this is a good time to put up the tips so folks can see them. Great. So, Randi, we're talking today with Randi Bussin, and she's an expert in career transitions, and she's going to talk to us now about how to reinvent yourself and 6 keys for reinventing your career and yourself. So
great. So I think the first key is you have to get to know yourself. I was lucky I sort of figured it out and fell into it, but you know, that doesn't always happen. And I suggest that people take the time, get off that crazy treadmill, you know, think of the hamster, the crazy treadmill at work, get off of it. Spend 4 or 5 or 6 weeks thinking about some of the things that I brought up. What are the rewards you want to get from your work? At 25, it might be money. At 50, it might be work-life balance.
Right.
You have to think about those.
Right.
What are your interests? Do you like to work with people or numbers or data, or, you know, do you like small companies, large companies? What are your motivated skills? That's really, really key in reinvention. What are you good at, and where do you get your satisfaction? So you could be a lawyer and really good at legal research, but hate it. Why lead with that? That's a burnout skill. You want to figure out what are you good at and where do you get your satisfaction.
That's good.
Okay.
So many people probably don't even think about that.
You know, career likes and dislikes.
Right.
What have you liked over your, you know, the last 15 years? What have you disliked? You know, what would you like to change? Those would be some great things.
Okay, so number 1 is get to know yourself.
Right.
Okay.
Number 2, ask the experts. So what I mean by that is, you know, if you think you might want to be an occupational therapist, reading up about it on the web is great, but you cannot make a decision
by reading about it
on the web.
Right.
There are some good websites for occupational information, and there are some less than great sites.
Yeah.
So if that's the case and you think that's a field you're interested in, go out and meet with 3 occupational therapists.
And ask them
and
about
ask
their
them
work.
questions and meet with people. Most careers come in different settings. So if you're an OT, you know, you could be working in an office with multiple OT. You could be in a hospital. You could be in a school setting. So meet with people in different settings and ask them questions. How they got started. How did they get trained?
And you help people craft the questions to ask, right?
I brief, you know, as part of my work together with folks, I help them figure out who to contact, how to find an occupational therapist if you don't have one in your network, then how to set up the meeting, what to say. I have it scripted by minute, right? And then, you know, these are the questions you should ask, but you need to hear it from people in those jobs, and you need to feel it here. And if it doesn't feel right, then it doesn't feel right. Okay?
Okay, so number 2, ask the experts. Okay.
Number 3, you got to dip your toe in the water. So let me go back to my career transition. When I decided I wanted to get into career counseling, I actually took an internship at the Boston College Carroll School of Management, and I made myself available on a pro bono basis to their career center for a semester. They used me for workshops, for counseling, all kinds of things, because I had to get some experience to see if I really liked it.
Right.
So by dipping your toe in the water, you know, it's one thing to read about it on the web. It's another thing to hear other people. Then try it. See if you'd like it. So pro bono work, volunteer work, you can do a vocation, you can moonlight. There's lots of ways to get experience. For each person, it differs. Some people need to have 5 experiences before they feel comfortable, and you can up the ante each time.
That's a little like what I did when I started to become a coach. So I hired, someone asked me if I would coach them, and when that happened, I hired somebody to coach me. So that was more like ask the experts, but I was being mentored at the same time. And then I tried starting with one client and did that for a period of a year, and that grew from there. So it was, you know, it was a little at a time, dipping my toe into it, and then went and got certified. So
and then that's
grew
usually the next piece, which is, and that could be tip number 7, which we could throw in on the fly, which is you often have to retool. I mean, I had to go back for career coach training, 6 years of training, resume writing, you know, coaching training through Coach U, and then Career Coach Academy, and then all the personal branding training. So you have to figure that piece out, is what additional training requirements do you have?
So number 3 is dip your toe in the water, and then Now we're on number 4, yes?
Well, I added
you
the
have
number
more.
4, which is the training. So,
There
but
you
let's
go.
go back to number 4, which is you have to look at the numbers.
And what does that mean?
I just did a long piece on this for Job Hunt where I write on career change is you have to look at the financial aspects of a career change. Oftentimes, you have to take a decrease in pay. Not always, but usually, right? If you're going to
Start more at the beginning, right? Versus
right.
being...
You might have to go back and take courses.
Right.
You might have to join new professional associations.
Right.
You might have to hire a coach.
Right.
So some of the areas that people should think about are your cash flow requirements,
Yeah.
building a cash cushion, training requirements for the new field and what those cost and how you're going to pay for those, researching salaries in the new field, getting a sense of what that might look like, having some credit available so that when you if you're going to go out and get a line of credit, get it while you're making 120, not when you're making 40,
Good
right?
advice.
Think about a handle on your health insurance costs if you're going to go out on your own.
Right.
So I have a lot of clients reinventing into self-employment.
Yes.
Think about the tax implications of all of
Huge,
this,
especially
and employee
Massachusetts.
benefits.
Yeah.
So I actually just wrote a piece on Job Hunt, and people can go up on looking. It's actually a 2-part series on looking at the financial aspects of a career change.
And how would they find, what's the URL for
It's
that?
www.job-hunt.org. And on the left-hand side, there's a column. It has all different experts, and you look for career change, and I'm listed.
Okay, great. And while we're doing URLs, why don't we give a plug for your URL?
Oh, thank you.
So that people can find you.
Sure. It's www.aspire, A-S-P-I-R-E, for, F-O-R, success.com.
Great. Aspireforsuccess.com. Great.